Lorephobiavault.
The house appeared in her search results on a Tuesday morning, nestled between listings that were either too small or too far from town, and Abby had stopped scrolling. She looked at the pictures for a long time. A craftsman-style two-story in Ridgefield, Washington. Good bones, the listing said, and for once she believed it. Wide front porch with original railings, a backyard that backed up against a tree line, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and a finished basement that could serve as a proper office. The price was listed at the very top of what her calculator said she could manage, but she had run the numbers twice and decided that some things were worth a stretch. She booked the tour for Thursday at 4. By the time she turned onto the street, the rain had started in the way that early spring rain in the Pacific Northwest always started. Not dramatic, just a slow, committed gray that settled over everything and made the world look like it had been photographed through a smudged lens. She pulled her car to the curb and sat for a moment, looking at the house through the windshield. It was even better in person. The porch light was already on. The man waiting for her at the front steps was not what she had expected from the voice on the phone. He was somewhere in his late 50s, broad-shouldered with silver hair that worked entirely in his favor. He wore a dark jacket over a collared shirt and smiled when he saw her coming up the walk, the kind of smile that suggested he had more charisma than he knew what to do with. "Abby?" He extended a hand. "Tom Reeves. Good to finally put a face to the name." She shook it. His grip was warm and unhurried. "Thanks for doing a late showing. This is when the house looks best, honestly." He glanced up at the sky, untroubled by the rain. Some houses need the light. This one doesn't. He held the door and she stepped inside. What stepped inside? The entryway was everything the pictures had promised. Original hardwood floors, a deep coat closet, crown molding that someone had taken care of over the decades. It smelled faintly of cedar and something older, not unpleasant. "So you're relocating?" Tom asked, falling into step beside her as they moved toward the living room. "Technically, I've been living in Vancouver for most of my life." She looked up at the ceiling height. "Hi," she approved. "I've wanted to get out of the city for some time." "What brought you out this way?" "Work is remote. Has been for years." She pulled out her phone to take a picture of the fireplace for her mother. A real one, Riverstone surround, deep firebox. "I'm a programmer. I can be pretty much anywhere that has reliable internet, so..." "Nice freedom to have." "It is." She took the picture. "My mom's actually the other reason. She's getting to a point where she needs some help, and I want her nearby, ideally under the same roof." She gestured at the hallway beyond the living room. 4 bedrooms is the main reason this one caught my eye. She'd have her own space, her own bathroom. It wouldn't feel like she was being managed. Tom nodded. "And is it just the two of you, or me, her, and my dog, Odin?" She smiled. "He's an Akita, so he needs the yard more than I do." Tom laughed. It was an easy laugh. "Well, let's make sure the yard lives up to his standards before we make any decisions." He showed her the kitchen, which had been updated without being gutted. The original cabinet structure remained, just refinished, and someone had chosen white subway tile that didn't try too hard. The countertops were butcher block. She ran a hand along one of the counters and thought Mom would love this. He walked her through the dining room, the half bath near the back entry, the utility closet with the washer and dryer. She took pictures as they went. The square footage felt generous but not hollow. There was a difference. Some large houses felt like they were daring you to fill them. This one felt like it could easily become her new home. By the time they came back to the main floor and started toward the staircase, she had begun doing the quiet mental arithmetic that happened when a house stopped being a possibility and started being the most likely candidate. She thought about which bedroom would face east for the morning light. She thought about whether Odin would scratch the floors. The second floor opened onto a wide landing with 4 doors visible from the top of the stairs. Tom gestured left first, toward a smaller bedroom that caught the backlight. "This is the second bedroom," he said. "Good closet, quiet side of the house. This could be Mom's," she thought. She'd have the tree view. He showed her the third and fourth bedrooms in sequence. Each clean and empty, each holding the particular stillness that vacant rooms carry. Then the master. It was large, with 2 windows that looked out over the front porch roof and down to the street below. She stood in the doorway for a moment. This is the one, she thought, and the certainty of it surprised her a little. Could I use the restroom, she asked. Of course, Tom gestured toward the ensuite door. Take your time, I'll just be out here. She went in, set her phone on the edge of the sink, washed her hands, looked at herself in the mirror for a moment. She was still wet at the shoulders from the walk up the path. Outside, the rain had thickened. She could hear it against the window above the tub. She dried her hands, picked up her phone, and stepped back out into the master bedroom. Tom was not there. Tom? Her voice came out level. She waited. Nothing. Just the rain. She stepped out onto the landing and looked both ways. Tom, sorry, I had a question about the... She stopped. The landing looked the same wide floorboards, the same neutral paint. But she was almost certain, standing there and counting, that there were 3 doors where there should have been 4. The door to the 3rd bedroom at the end of the landing was just gone. She turned slowly. The bedroom she had thought of as the 4th, the one Tom had shown her last before the master, should have been directly to her right. There was a door there. She opened it, a closet. Narrow, shallow, a bar for hangers and a single high shelf. That's not right, she thought. That was a room. He showed me a room. She stood in the hallway and tried to reconstruct the tour in her mind. She had been paying attention. She had been taking pictures. She pulled up her camera roll and scrolled back through the images, landing on the ones she had taken upstairs, 3 bedrooms not counting the master. She had a picture of each, but the angles were short, taken from doorways, and the landing itself wasn't captured. She couldn't prove anything from the pictures. She told herself there was an explanation. She had gotten turned around. The rooms were similarly sized. She went downstairs. The living room was the way she remembered it, mostly. The stone fireplace, the hardwood, the afternoon dark outside the windows. But there were boxes near the hearth. A loose stack of brown cardboard, the kind that came from a hardware store. Some folded flat, some assembled and sealed. She stood at the bottom of the stairs and looked at them for a long moment. She went back to her phone and found the picture she had taken of the fireplace for her mother. She brought it up to see if maybe she just missed them before. No boxes in the picture. The hearth was clear. That picture is from just a few minutes ago, she thought. She turned and walked toward where she remembered the front door being. A wide window looked out at the porch, the wet railing, the empty street. The light was still on. Her car was at the curb. There was no door. She said his name again, louder this time, and heard it go flat against the walls the way sound does in an empty house. Tom? Nothing came back. She moved through the living room slowly, past the cardboard boxes she was trying not to think about, and checked the dining room. Empty. The half bath near the back entry. Empty. She went to the basement door and opened it an inch, looked down into the dark at the bottom of the stairs and closed it again without going down. She checked the kitchen. The overhead light was on and the room was exactly as she had left it, still and clean and uninhabited. She called Tom Reeves. The line rang 4 times and went to voicemail. A professionally recorded message, confident and unhurried. She hung up without leaving one and stood in the kitchen with her phone in her hand. Where did he go, she thought. You don't just leave during a showing. She thought about the front door, the window where the front door had been. She tried to assemble a reasonable explanation for that and found that she couldn't, so she let it sit at the back of her mind while she thought about what to do next. The garage. She hadn't seen the inside of it during the tour. Tom had mentioned it in passing, a 2-car attached garage accessed from the kitchen. She had seen the wide door from the street when she pulled up. She found the door off the kitchen, a plain interior door with a brushed nickel handle, and pushed it open. The garage was dim. A single fluorescent tube overhead gave off a thin, institutional light. There were shelving units along one wall, empty, and the concrete floor had the oil-stained ghosts of vehicles long gone. She stepped down from the threshold and turned to look at what was parked inside. Her car. Her car was in the garage. She stared at it. A gray Subaru Outback with a small dent above the rear passenger wheel well that she had gotten in a parking lot 2 years ago and never fixed. her parking pass hanging from the mirror. The little dog tag Odin had destroyed, and she had kept anyway. Still looped around the gear shift. She had parked on the street. She had walked up the front path in the rain. She had a specific memory of glancing back at the car as she reached the porch steps, the way she always did, a reflex. She had just seen it from the window in the living room, sitting at the curb under the streetlight. She walked to the driver's side and put her hand on the hood. Cool, dry. It had not been driven recently. This is not possible, she thought. She found the garage door control panel on the wall and pressed the button. A mechanical sound started, the chain moving, and then stopped. The door shuddered and did not rise. She pressed it again. The same brief effort, and then nothing. She looked at the door and then looked for the manual release cord. It was there, a red handle hanging from the trolley. She reached up and pulled it. The cord came free with the right resistance, the right sound, the mechanism disengaging cleanly. She bent and grabbed the door handle at the bottom and pulled. The door did not move, not an inch. She straightened up and looked at it. On the far side of the garage, there was a side door, the kind that opened to a side yard. She crossed to it, turned the deadbolt, turned the knob, and pulled. The door held as though it had been sealed from the outside. She put her weight into it. Nothing gave. She let go of the handle and stood in the middle of the garage for a moment. The fluorescent light buzzed once and steadied. She went back to the interior door. It opened into the living room. She stopped with her hand still on the knob and looked at the room in front of her. The fireplace, the cardboard boxes, and now there were more of them. She was almost certain there were more than before. The wide doorway leading to the front hall. She turned and looked back into the garage behind her, then forward again into the living room. I came through the kitchen, she thought. I walked from the kitchen. That door was in the kitchen. She hurried through the living room to find the kitchen. The kitchen was exactly as it should have been. Same counters, same tile, same overhead light, nothing out of place. She stood in it for a moment and let it steady her. Then she turned to the door that had led to the garage. It opened into a staircase going down. She was looking at bare wooden steps descending into the kind of dark that basements have. The kind that doesn't wait passively but seems to press back against the opening. A smell came up from below. Not rot, not anything she could name clearly. Old, still, and enclosed. She shut the door. She stood with her back against the counter and pressed her palms flat against the edge of it. "You are not going crazy," she thought, before immediately coming back with, "That is exactly what someone going crazy would tell themselves." She thought about the patio door. The living room had a set of sliding glass doors that looked out onto the back patio. She had taken a picture of the backyard for her mother, the tree line at the back of the lot. Odin would love that yard. She went back to the living room. The wall was flat, unbroken, painted the same neutral gray as the rest of the room, with the same baseboard trim running along the bottom. No sliding door, no windows. The entire exterior wall, where she had stood and looked out at the trees, had been replaced by a featureless interior surface, as though it had never contained an opening of any kind. Abby sat down on the floor, not on one of the boxes, not near them, just on the hardwood in the middle of the room, with her back to the fireplace and her phone in her lap. She looked at the flat wall for a while. She looked at the boxes. She listened to the rain, which she could still hear, which meant there were still windows somewhere in the house, even if not in this room. There's an explanation, she thought. There has to be an explanation. She called her mother. It rang twice. "Hey, sweetheart." Her mother's voice was warm and ordinary, and Abby felt something loosen in her chest at the sound of it. "Mom?" She was surprised to find that her voice was shaking. "Mom, something is really wrong. I'm at the house, the one in Ridgefield, and I don't know what's happening, but the front door is just gone. It's a window now, and I tried to leave through the garage and my car is in there, but I swear to God I parked on the street. I saw it from the window, and now the garage doors won't open, and the door I came through from the kitchen opened into the living room, and then when I went back, the kitchen door goes to the basement, and the whole back wall is just..." She stopped. She was breathing too fast. A brief pause on the line. "Abby." Her mother's voice was careful, not alarmed. The tone she used when she thought Abby was overreacting. "What are you talking about?" "The house," The showing. I can't find the real estate agent, and I can't get out, and the layout keeps. Honey, a small puzzled laugh. You already bought the house. Abby said nothing, as her heart seemed to stop dead in its tracks. I thought you were moving some of your things in today. Isn't that what you said? You had a few boxes you wanted to get over there before the weekend. Abby looked at the cardboard boxes stacked near the fireplace. Mom, I did not buy this house. I am at a showing right now. I have been here for maybe 20 minutes, sweetheart. I'm not confused. I know what's happening. I drove here this afternoon. I met the real estate agent. His name is Tom Reeves, and we toured the first floor and then the second floor, and I asked to use the bathroom in the master bedroom, and when I came out, he was gone. And now the house is different. The doors go to different places. The front door is not there anymore. Abby. Her mother's voice had shifted into something quieter and more serious. The tone that came out when she was genuinely worried rather than mildly concerned. You're scaring me. I'm scaring myself. What you're describing isn't a pause. I need you to listen to me. You closed on that house 3 weeks ago. You've been so excited about it. We've talked about it several times. You called me after you signed the papers and you were crying, happy crying, and you told me the basement was going to be your office. That didn't happen. You need to see someone, a doctor. I don't know if this is stress or something else, but this isn't right. What you're describing isn't. I have pictures, Mom. I took pictures during the tour. The house looks different in the pictures than it does right now. There was a patio door, and now there isn't. Doesn't that, Abby? People don't just forget buying a house. I know that. I know how it sounds. I'm telling you something is wrong with this house, not with me. Then come home. Get in your car and come home and we'll talk about it. I can't get out. She said it quietly. The doors won't open. I don't know what to tell you then, honey. I think the stress of this transition is getting to your head, and you just need to calm down, and Abby hung up. She sat on the floor with her phone in her hands and stared at the flat wall where the patio door had been. Her mother's voice was still in her head. 3 weeks ago, you were crying. Happy crying. She tried to reach back past the last 20 minutes and find something. Any memory of a closing, a signature, a handshake across a table. There was nothing. She knew exactly what the last 20 minutes contained. She knew the drive here, the rain, Tom at the front steps. She knew the kitchen counters and the basement door and the particular smell of cedar in the entryway. Everything before the tour was intact. Everything the tour should have led to was simply absent. She's wrong, Abby thought. She has to be wrong. She stood up and walked to the boxes. There were 6 of them. She opened the nearest one and found her kitchen things, a French press she had owned for 4 years. A set of ceramic bowls she had bought at a market in Portland. A wooden spoon with a burn mark on the handle from an incident with a gas burner. She opened the next box. Books. Hers. She recognized the cracked spines, the specific wear patterns, a paperback with her own handwriting in the margins from a college seminar she barely remembered taking. She sat back on her heels, looked at what she had unpacked, and felt something in her chest go sideways, a long structural crack running through the version of events she had been holding onto. She pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. She breathed. She allowed herself 30 seconds of it, the shaking, the tight throat, and the feeling that the floor was doing something floors shouldn't do. Then she stopped. She picked up her phone and opened her camera roll. The pictures were there. 23 of them, time-stamped from the last half hour. She went through them methodically, standing in the living room, holding the phone up to compare. The fireplace matched. The crown molding matched. The floors matched. The patio door did not match. In the photo she had taken for her mother, there were 2 large windows flanking a set of sliding glass doors, gray afternoon light coming through. The tree line visible at the back of the yard. She lowered the phone and looked at the wall directly in front of her. Flat, unbroken, painted gray. She went to the kitchen. She pulled up the picture she had taken of the countertops and held it next to the real thing. Exact match. The butcher block, the subway tile, the window above the sink that looked out at the side yard. She looked at the exterior door in her photo and then found it now, in the same position, same hardware. She crossed to it and tried it, locked, and it felt wrong when she pulled it. The the same sealed resistance as the garage doors. She tried the door that had twice changed its destination. She opened it slowly. Stairs going down, she closed it. She breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth, and thought about what she believed. She believed the pictures. She believed her own memory of the last 20 minutes, which was intact and detailed and consistent. She believed that the house had changed around her in ways that could not be explained by any framework she currently possessed. Okay, she thought. Okay, so it's something else. Something else meant something she didn't have a word for. Something she didn't want a word for. She turned and walked to the half bath near the back entry. Her memories told her it was a small room, just a toilet, pedestal sink, and a narrow mirror. She had been in it briefly during the tour, barely glanced at it. She reached for the handle. The door opened into the master bathroom. She stood in the doorway and looked at it. White subway tile. A clawfoot tub against the far wall. A double vanity with the same mirror she had looked into when she washed her hands. The window above the tub, rain running down the glass. Reality was shifting in a way that made Abby feel dizzy. She sat down on the closed toilet lid, pulled the door shut behind her, and looked at the room. She looked at the grout lines and the curve of the tub and the particular brushed nickel of the faucet handles. She counted tiles. She listened to the rain on the window. Eventually, she stood up. She opened the door. Tom Reeves was standing in the master bathroom on the other side of the door. Jacket still neat, silver hair still in place, holding his phone loosely at his side and smiling the same easy smile he had given her at the front steps. "Alrighty then," he said. His voice was exactly as she remembered it, warm and unhurried. "Ready to keep going? I can show you the garage next, or the basement if you'd rather start there." She stood in the bathroom doorway and just looked at him. Despite her need to speak, she just could not make her mouth form a complete sentence. The sounds were there somewhere, the objections, the questions, the basic human need to say what had just happened to her, but they had all jammed together somewhere between her lungs and her lips, and what came out was very small. "Garage," she said. Tom tilted his head slightly. Not concerned, exactly. Attentive. "You sure you're doing all right? You look a little pale." "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. He gave her one more moment of that attentive look and then nodded and turned toward the hallway. She followed him out of the master bedroom and stopped. The walls were blue, a deep, muted blue, the kind of color chosen deliberately by someone with an opinion about color. Every wall on the second floor landing. She looked at the doors. They were in different positions than they had been. The landing did not open the way it had. The curve of it ran in the opposite direction, sweeping right instead of left, so that the stairs were on the wrong side. The light fixtures were different. The floors were no longer hardwood, becoming a soft white carpet instead. She turned slowly and looked at it all. Tom was already moving toward the stairs. The stairs were different. The handrail was a different profile, and the risers were painted white where before they had been stained to match the treads. She held the rail as she came down and felt the wrongness of it in her palm. The fireplace in the living room now dark brick. The mantel was narrower. She stared at it as they passed through. The kitchen. She had just been in the kitchen. The counters were dark quartz. The cabinets were a slate gray, and nothing about it matched the butcher block and white subway tile she had stood in front of with her phone. The window above the sink faced a different direction. The light coming through it was wrong. "Through here," Tom said pleasantly, reaching for the door to the garage. "Tom." She stopped walking. He turned. "I'm sorry, I don't think I feel very well. I think I need to leave." He looked at her with what appeared to be genuine concern and a small amount of professional uncertainty. The expression of a man recalibrating. "Of course. Are you all right to drive?" "I can. I just need some air. Can you show me to the front door?" "Absolutely." No hesitation. He moved back through the kitchen with the easy confidence of someone who knew the floor plan, and she followed him through the living room and into the front hall. He stopped at the door and gestured to it the way you gesture at something simple. "I'll give you a moment. I'll just lock up in a few minutes. No rush." She nodded and turned the handle and pulled the door open. The stairs went down into the dark. The same bare wooden steps, the same dense black at the bottom, and now, coming up from below, a sound. Soft and variable. almost like conversation. More than one voice, she thought, though she could not make out anything that resolved into words, just the rise and fall of it, the cadence of people talking quietly in another room. She stood with her hand on the door handle and listened. The sound below sent chills down her spine, unlike anything she had ever experienced. She turned around. Tom was not in the hallway, not in the living room. The front hall was empty in both directions. She slammed the door. She found the deadbolt, threw it closed, stood with her back pressed against the door and breathed. She closed her eyes, trying to center herself again, but to no avail. She hesitantly walked forward. Her couch was in the living room. The oversized one in the color she had always privately thought of as dirty mustard, the one with the throw blanket her college roommate had given her folded over the left arm. Her coffee table, her books on the shelf, the same ones she had found in the cardboard box. A candle on the mantel of the wrong fireplace. A print on the wall she had bought in Seattle 3 years ago. Everything was different. The walls, the layout, the fixtures. And all of it was full of her things, arranged with the ease of long habitation, as though she had lived here for months and had never done it any other way. Odin was at the foot of the couch. He was on his side in the full unconscious sprawl that Akitas achieve when they are completely at peace. One paw extended, his chest rising and falling slowly. He looked like he had been there all afternoon. She crossed the room in several fast steps, got down on the floor beside him, put both arms around him, and pressed her face into the thick fur at the back of his neck. He stirred and made the low sound he made when he was startled out of a good sleep. Then his tail moved once against the floor before he settled. She held on to him and cried in a way she hadn't cried in years, not in public or in private, the kind that came from somewhere structural. Approaching footsteps from the hallway broke through Abby's crying. "Abby?" Her mother's voice. Her mother was in the doorway, wearing the cardigan she wore in the evenings, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked at Abby on the floor, and her expression moved quickly from surprise into concern. "What happened? What's wrong?" Abby shook her head. She didn't have the architecture for an explanation. Her mother crossed the room without asking further questions, lowered herself onto the couch, put her hand on Abby's back and moved it in slow circles. She didn't say anything for a moment, just the circles. "Tell me what's going on," she said quietly. "I don't know." Abby's voice came out wrecked. "I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know what's real. I don't know what I know." Her mother's hand kept moving. "It's okay, Abby. I don't know what to do." "You don't need to know right now," she said it simply. The way she said things she had decided were true. "We're going to get you to the doctor tomorrow morning, first thing, okay? We'll get some answers, and tonight you're going to sleep." She paused. "You have done so much these last few weeks. The house, the move, all my appointments on top of your work. Abby, this place looks beautiful. You made it feel like home so fast. I don't think you've let yourself stop for 5 seconds since the keys." Abby said nothing. "The stress has to go somewhere." Her mother stood, kept one hand on her shoulder, and guided her up. "Come on. Upstairs, everything else can wait." She let herself be led. Up the stairs she didn't remember, past the walls the wrong color. Her mother opened the door to the room that was apparently her room. The bed was there with her own sheets on it, her lamp on the nightstand. She laid down and stared at the ceiling. Her mother stood in the doorway. "I love you. I can go with you to the doctor's tomorrow if you want the company." "Okay," Abby said. "Good night." The door closed. The room was quiet. The rain had stopped at some point without her noticing. She lay still for a while before she picked up her phone. The pictures were there, all 23. She opened the last one, sat up in bed, looked at it, and then looked at the wall across from her. Different color. She opened the photo of the living room fireplace. Different composition. She opened the photo of the kitchen. Different everything. The timestamp on the first photo read 4:47. She looked at the clock on her phone, 5:26. She opened her recent calls. Tom Reeves at 5:02, her mother at 5:08. She looked at the room around her. The lamp she recognized. The sheets she had owned for 2 years. The window looking out at a dark she didn't know. She sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her mother needed to see the pictures. That was the thought that pulled her upright, simple and clarifying. The timestamps, the call log, the photos of a house that no longer matched the house she was sitting in. Her mother could look at those, see what Abby was seeing, and then they could figure out what to do together. She opened the bedroom door. The hallway was old, not aged the way old houses went gracefully old. This was abandonment. The paint on the walls had lifted and curled away in long strips, exposing plaster that had cracked along lines that looked almost deliberate. The floor was dusty in a way that suggested years, and there were things on it, plaster chips and something that had been a curtain and a length of baseboard that had come away from the wall and been left where it fell. The light was dim and sourceless. The ceiling had water stains and patterns she did not want to look at too closely. She turned back. Her room was her room, lamp on the nightstand, her sheets, the window with the dark outside. She stood in the doorway between the two and breathed. Maybe she's right, she thought. The thought tired rather than convinced. Maybe something is happening to my mind. Maybe I'm going crazy. But underneath that thought was something less articulate. It told her that it didn't matter. Stress or haunting or breakdown or something with no name at all. Something was wrong with this house. She had to get out. She stepped into the hallway. There were 3 doors, all of them warped in their frames, paint peeling from their surfaces in the same condition as the walls. Her door behind her. 2 others, one on each side of the hall. At the end of the hallway where she remembered the landing and the stairs, there was a staircase, but not the one from before. A spiral staircase, cast iron from the look of it, corkscrewing downward through an opening in the floor that had no business being there. She walked to the edge and looked down. The staircase went down past the point where she could see. It simply continued, shrinking with distance until the blackness of an abyss took over. She took a step back from the edge. She tried the door on her left. The room beyond was not a room. Steps going down into the same dense dark she had been encountering all evening, and from below, barely audible, the sound of voices, soft and unintelligible. She shut the door. The door on her right was identical. Same stairs, same dark. Same voices. It was the same door to the same destination, just in a different spot. She shut that door and stood in the hallway. The spiral staircase waited at the end of it. She went down, the iron was cold under her hand, and the steps rang softly with each footfall. She counted them without deciding to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The hallway above receded. The dark below did not resolve. She counted through 20, 80, 200, 1,000, lost count, started again and lost it again. The staircase curved in its unchanging radius. Below her there was nothing for a long time. She didn't know how long. Time in the staircase felt approximate, like trying to recall a duration from inside a dream. Her legs ached. Her hand on the railing had gone from cold to numb. At some point, she stopped thinking in complete thoughts and moved through something more like meditation, one foot and then the other. Then a light, dull and red, the color of an exit sign, which was what it was. She descended toward it and the bottom arrived. A landing just large enough to stand on. A single door old, with a standard push bar across the middle and an exit sign mounted above it in that particular red. She hit the bar with both hands. Nothing. She hit it again. She braced her feet against the floor and pushed with her full weight. The door held as though it were a wall that someone had put a door handle on as a joke. She pounded on it with the flat of her palm and called for help. All she heard was her own voice go up through the staircase in a long, strange echo, until her words came back to her rearranged. She stopped. She stood in the red light and tried to think. Her phone was not in her pocket. She checked the other pocket and then ran both hands over herself the way you do when you already know something isn't there. The phone was gone. She tried to reconstruct when she had last had it. She couldn't remember. She thought about what she knew. The doors upstairs both led the same place. The staircase had brought her here. The exit door would not open. The only remaining direction was up. She started climbing. She counted from the first step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The red light faded below her. She counted through 10 and 20, and at 24 she was at the top, 24 stairs. She stood on the landing and looked back down the spiral. It corkscrewed away and disappeared exactly as before. She had counted 24 stairs on her ascent. She had been descending for what had felt like hours. The hallway was unchanged. Peeling paint, debris on the floor, the two closed doors on either side. Her bedroom door still open, the lamp still on, the bed still with her sheets on it. She went back in and shut the door. She sat on the bed and looked at the window. The darkness outside was total. Not the darkness of night with stars or streetlights or the suggestion of a horizon. Just black the way a wall was black, the way the bottom of the staircase had been black. She thought about the door at the bottom. Exit. It had said exit in the standard red, and it had been sealed. She thought about what the house had done with doors, moved them, changed what was behind them, replaced them with windows, and then removed the windows. Everything different between each viewing, but the exit sign had been there. Something had put it there. She didn't want to think about what that meant. She didn't want the old hallway with its peeling walls and its impossible staircase. She sat on the bed, looked at the door, and made a decision. She would wait to see if what was behind it would change. She did not remember closing her eyes. One moment she was sitting on the bed with her hand loose in her lap, looking at the black window, and then there was no transition at all. No drowsiness, no slow descent, just a seam, and then she was somewhere else. The mattress was bare. No sheets, no pillow, no frame beneath it. Just a rectangle in the middle of a floor that extended in every direction without interruption. Above her, a single recessed light in a section of ceiling that hovered overhead with no walls to connect it to anything. She lay on her back, looked up at it, then sat up and looked out. The room had no edges. The floor was a normal floor, woodprint vinyl or something like it, and the ceiling was a standard spackled white. Beyond those two facts, everything stopped being normal very quickly. The space simply continued, in every direction. Floor and ceiling with nothing between them, dark gathering at the middle distance and becoming complete darkness beyond that. She stood up. She picked a direction and ran. The light behind her shrank away. She kept her eyes forward and ran into the dark. Her footsteps came back to her wrong, the echo arriving from the wrong angle, from above or from somewhere lateral or from below. She focused on her breathing and kept running. The light behind her became a point despite her never looking back at it. Dark in all directions. She ran for what felt like an hour and then longer. She was not in good shape, but she was not in bad shape either. She pushed past the place where her lungs complained and into the steadier territory beyond it. The floor did not change. Nothing changed. No wall came forward to meet her. No light appeared ahead. She ran through the pain in her side and the heat in her legs and the strange directionless echo of her own feet. Eventually her legs stopped working the way legs were supposed to work. She went down hard, catching herself on her palms, and lay there with her cheek against the floor and breathed. After a while, she started to crawl. She didn't make a decision about it. Her arms simply started moving and she followed them. The floor under her palms was smooth and constant and revealed nothing. Her arms stopped working too. She lay flat in the dark and felt her body report its damages, which were considerable. Everything burned. Her shoulders, her hips, the heels of her hands. She pressed her face against the floor and let herself be still. She thought about Odin. She tried to see him clearly, the specific brown of his eyes, the way one ear folded differently than the other. She reached for it, found something close, but not quite right, some detail loose in the reconstruction. The effort of reaching for it was its own kind of exhaustion. She tried her mother's face, the cardigan, the reading glasses pushed up. She had the shape of it, but the particulars kept sliding. The exact color of her eyes, the specific pattern of lines at the corners of her mouth when she smiled. She lay there and tried to remember them back into sharpness and could not. That frightened her more than the dark or the running or the stairs or any door that had opened onto something wrong. The house had taken a lot of things from her mind. She had not expected it to take this. She stayed down for a long time. Then her hands moved again. She pushed herself up. Her legs answered slowly in phases, first to kneeling and then to something like standing. She hurt in a deep and total way. She looked around. Far off in the direction she had come from, or the direction she thought she had come from, or some direction there was a glow. Red, faint, the color she recognized. She moved toward it. The red resolved as she approached it into the familiar shape of a door, standing free in the middle of the floor with no wall around it. The exit sign mounted above it, casting its light in a small radius on the empty floor. The door stood there, self-contained and matter-of-fact, as though freestanding doors in infinite dark rooms were a reasonable thing. She pushed it. It opened. The stairs were on the other side. The same stairs she had been avoiding all evening, plain wooden steps descending into basement dark. The voices came up from below, the same soft conversational murmur she had heard before. She stood in the open doorway, listened to it, and quickly understood that she had run out of other options some time ago. She went down. The basement was a utility basement. Concrete floor, exposed joists overhead, a water heater in the corner, a washer and dryer against the far wall. Normal things, the things many basements had. The light was functional and adequate. There was a card table in the middle of the room. 3 people sat around it. They were wearing medical gowns and pants, the kind you were given rather than chose. A hand of cards lay face down on the table at the 4th chair. One of the men looked up from his cards when he heard her on the stairs. He had a mild face, patient eyes, and he looked at her the way you looked at someone you had been expecting. "Took you long enough," he said. "We were afraid you forgot about us up there." He nodded at the empty chair and the waiting hand. "Your turn, Abby." Becky's wipers were doing their best against the kind of rain that didn't care. She had the heat up, the radio down, and her coffee in the cup holder going cold the way it always did on the drive-in. She was thinking about nothing in particular, the specific, comfortable blankness of a familiar commute, when she turned into the parking lot and saw the cruiser, 2 of them actually, parked at angles near the main entrance, the way police cars parked when they had arrived with some urgency. She pulled into her spot and watched through the windshield as 2 officers came through the front doors and walked to their vehicles with the gait of people whose job at a particular location was finished. They didn't look at her. She watched them pull out, turn onto the street, and disappear into the gray. She sat for a moment with her engine idling. Then she grabbed her bag and her cold coffee and went inside. The entry of the Cascade View Inpatient Center smelled the way it always smelled, recycled warmth and something faintly medicinal underneath. The lights in the lobby were the lights they always were. Sandra was at the reception desk in the same chair she was always in. Everything was exactly normal except for the worry on Sandra's face. What was that about? Becky set her bag on the desk and nodded toward the parking lot. Sandra looked up. "We had a situation this morning." "What kind of situation?" Sandra folded her hands on the desk. "One of the patients is missing." Becky set down her coffee. "Missing?" "As of about 8 this morning." "Which patient?" "The one with the severe memory problems." Becky was quiet for a moment. "Abby, that's her." "What happened?" "So you know how she always plays cards down in the basement with Calvin and them?" "Sure." "She was down there this morning. Calvin said everything was normal. They were halfway through a hand and she excused herself to use the bathroom." Sandra paused. "He said she seemed a little off when she came back. More than usual. She was distressed, apparently. Couldn't get her bearings, couldn't remember where she was or who she was with. You know how she gets." Becky nodded. But this time she was really freaking out. Not just confused, scared. Calvin tried to calm her down and she went back to the bathroom and locked the door from the inside. Sandra pressed her lips together. The orderlies could hear her in there. She was crying or talking. They couldn't tell which. They gave her a few minutes and then they knocked and she didn't answer. So they got Mike to get the master key. Becky waited. When they opened the door, Sandra said she wasn't in there. Becky looked at her. "There's no window in that bathroom. It's one of the interior ones, no exterior access at all. They pulled the security footage first thing. The camera covers the whole hallway. There's only the one entrance." She went in. Sandra spread her hands flat on the desk. She never came out. The lobby was quiet around them. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened and closed. "The police think she found a way out we don't know about," Sandra said. "They're going to do a full review of the building schematics. But Mike has been here for 11 years and he walked every inch of that bathroom this morning. She shook her head. There's nowhere to go. There's just no way out of that room. It's like, Sandra started, looking for the correct words to describe an impossible situation. It's like she went into that bathroom, closed the door, and vanished from existence. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Let me know what you thought about tonight's story in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, commenting, and sharing it with others who enjoy horror stories. If you have a creepy, strange, paranormal, or unexplained experience of your own, or know someone who does, you can send it to us through the email address in the description or the pinned comment. You can submit your story either in written form or as a voice recording. If your story is selected, it may be featured in a future video and shared with the Lorephobia Vault community. Thank you for listening. Until next time, keep the vault closed.